Welcome everyone to the Stories of Recovery. My name is Iris. I'm an alcoholic in recovery from addiction, on a path of discovery. So glad to be here with you today. So glad to be here to share my story. Such a blessing. Such a blessing to have a story of recovery. My God, such a blessing to have a story of recovery. My story is so hard to find a title for it, right? They're like, what's the title of your story? I'm like, oh God, I don't know. And I titled it Destined to Recover. I felt on a real destiny path of addiction, and specifically alcoholism. I felt on a real destiny path with that. There was just no other way. When I was I have some memories as a very small child. One thing that we used to talk about, we would joke about it as I got a little bit older and I wasn't drinking from bottles anymore, but I had bottles. I had attachment things, So I had my bottles, and my parents would put orange juice in a bottle, right? So I'd have a juice bottle and then I have a milk bottle, and I wanted to have them at the same time. I wanted to have like one in one side of my mouth and one in the other side of my mouth, drinking from them at the same time. It would instantly curdle the second it hit my mouth. But I was just like, I just needed more. I needed everything at the same time. And I remember being very attached to them. And I remember them being taken away. I remember my bottles being taken away. Like, it's a very clear memory of mine from being a child. I also remember being in preschool and having, we would sit on these little carpet sample squares, and there was a little hole in the corner of the carpet sample, and I would stick my finger in the hole of the carpet sample. So this was in preschool. I would stick my finger in the hole of the carpet sample, right? Because they would go on a large ring, when you're picking out carpet in the store in the 80s when people, did that. so there was like a little hole in the corner. I would sit on the carpet sample and I would stick my finger in the hole, and it wasn't quite the right size, right? So it would get stuck and it would swell up, and I would panic, and I would have to raise my hand, and the teacher would have to come over and butter my finger out of the hole. I would get myself in a jam often with this. I couldn't resist it. I don't know what it was. Couldn't resist it. So it got to the point where I wasn't allowed to sit on the carpet samples anymore. This is like preschool. This is so young. I had these uncontrollable urges. Funny, fast forward years later to when I'm 23 years old and I went to my first AA meeting. The AA meeting I went to was in the very room that I had to have the carpet samples removed from me and have them taken away. So I remember being this kind of child that was oversensitive and a little compulsive in collecting, and I realize now that even in that time, I was looking to come into the present moment. I was really looking to come into the present moment. These were sensory things that I could, things I could touch, things that I could feel. Even when it was drinking, it was about coming back into the present moment. It was being able to navigate this human experience in a way where I could, come back into the now. So here we are. I'm this kind of sensitive and compulsive child that has a few idiosyncrasies, let's call them. I come into this age when I'm starting to hit puberty, 10 years old, 11 years old, coming into 12 years old, and I take my first drink. I was 11 when I took my first drink. And well, maybe it wasn't my very first, but it was the first time I got drunk for sure. It was the first time that I had the sleepover overnight with my friends, where the parents were out for the night and there was a liquor cabinet and we were able to just dive in there. I had 22 shots of various liquors that night at 11 years old, and I didn't black out and I didn't throw up. I had this unusual tolerance to alcohol from a very young age. When I look at the, points of like, oh, you might be an alcoholic, this kind of person that's predestined genetically, predispositioned, let's say predisposition. But in my case, it was a destiny that I really feel was true for me. When I came into this, when I read in health class all the points of like, some things that might be a little bit different about you constitutionally, that kind of alert that you will be this person that genetically, your physiological conditioning might be a little bit different. Oh, I hit every point. It was like in the family line. First time you drink, you get, like you have a unusual tolerance. You've missed work. You've lost friendships. By seventh grade, I was checking all these points. By seventh grade, so that was in between fifth and sixth grade. By seventh grade, I was having vodka and orange juice in the morning. By seventh grade, I was drinking regularly. I also remember, I was recounting this the other day, sitting in homeroom in seventh grade and turning to the person behind me. And I said, I need a cigarette. And he goes, you smoke? And I was like, I do now. And I got up and I went to the playground and I found someone who had a cigarette, and he gave me a cigarette, and I started smoking. I was like really driven to this. I was driven on this path of addiction at the time. Another key point that I will remember, in high school, there was another incident, it was important to me to do the right thing. That felt very important to me. Show up. I wanted to be responsible. I wanted to, have this, responsibility, right? So I don't know, it was maybe 13 or 14 or something. And I was going to be babysitting for my infant cousin, my second cousin, my cousin's baby. I was going to be babysitting for him. We had a half day of school, and I had these like couple hours before I had to go and babysit for my cousin. And I couldn't not, when offered alcohol, I couldn't not do it. Even when I had somewhere to be, and I'm 14 years old, and it was one of those nights, one of those days where I ended up in an actual gutter, laying on the street in a puddle of my own vomit. Fortunately, I'm in a really rural area. There's not a lot of cars on the street, but the visual is not attractive. So I end up back at my house, and eventually somebody brought me back to my house. They dropped me off in the corner. You know the deal, right? They drop you off in the corner, and by that half block walk home, you should have been completely sobered up. No one will ever be the wiser. You just go in and like nothing happened. Not so much the case. Of course, everyone knew, and it was a big deal. I'm 14 years old and drinking in the afternoon vodka on a Wednesday, right? And so the next day, when I sobered up, my mother had a conversation with me, and she said, you're an alcoholic. And she said, I'm an alcoholic, and my father was an alcoholic, and your father's father was an alcoholic. And my sister is an alcoholic, not my sister, my mother's sister. She's talking about her sister. She was an alcoholic, and we are this way. It's our family. We're alcoholics. And if you don't get a handle on this now, you're going to have to stop one day. You're going to have to stop. She was trying to, give me a way out of, I don't know. I'm not quite sure what she was trying to say. She said, I hope you don't have to, she said, you're going to have to give it up one day. And I hope that doesn't happen to you. She regrets saying that to me today, she says, because she sees how much better my life is now that I have given it up. But at the time she said, I hope that you don't have to give it up. And I remember this just full knowing that, well, then I'm just going to have to give it up one day, because there was no coming back from how far I had gone into addiction at that point. There was no turning back from that. I just kind of understood at that point, well, I'm in this now, and one day I'll just have to stop. So we'll fast forward. That's so that's from like 13 or 14. I don't really remember. Fast forward to when I'm 22, and it didn't go great from there. It was a lot of what I turned into was a violent blackout drinker. So I would black out often, and in my blackouts, if somebody said that they were going to take away my alcohol for the night, if they were like, "You've had enough," which was every time, they're like, "You might want to just, have a glass of water." I would have that same kind of animalistic reaction as if somebody was taking away my very breath. That like rageful, defensive, like, that fight or flight. I got into real fight mode in that. So I would black out and I would go into these violent rages. So here we are at 22, and it's turned into drug addiction as well as alcoholism. It's taken me through already one detox, an attempt at sobriety, not real attempt at sobriety, but a detox. And I was in a really violent and destructive, toxic relationship that I was having trouble getting out of. And it was really vicious that time. It was desperate. And I remember talking to God for probably maybe one of the first times in my life. I spoke to God maybe for one of the first times in my life, like that real kind of real talk. There was the prayers as a child. I was raised in the church, and it was a lovely experience for me. All the people that I had met in the church, save, normal human behavior, but it was a lovely experience for me. It was nurturing, and it was kind, and it was really lovely. But I had stepped away from the church at a certain point. That had to be the natural progression. Didn't feel appropriate for me to be actively in addiction and in the church at the same time. It felt like I had a certain point had to make a decision. I'm either going to continue on this path that I don't really feel like I can get off of. It's just the pull is too strong, or I can continue to be spiritually connected. And I remember that real split in the path. So here we are. I'm down that forked road quite a ways down, and I had been waking up a little bit, and I remember screaming to God, not just a gentle knock. It was one of these like heart screams where I said, I can't do this anymore, and I need help. That I don't know who you are or what you do, but I need a miracle. And I said, I need to get away from this guy. I need to get away from the drugs. They were just coming from all directions. I can't do it on my own. I need some time off from work. I'm just working all the time. I can't catch up. And then I started breaking it down. I was like, you know what? And then the ego stepped in, and I was like, hey, and you know what? If we're like asking for things, then I want time to read books. My parents were going to the Finger Lakes, and I wanted to go with them. I'm 22 years old, right? I want to go to the Finger Lakes. I want to travel a little bit. The traveling would be nice, and money. I want money. So I was just like, so this like, desperate place. I had this prayer. Within a week, I got into a car accident with a taxi driver. We were, driving around. I would do drugs with this taxi driver, and we drove off the road and got in this car accident. From that single incident, I got time off from work. I had time to read books. There was a restraining order against my house, so George couldn't come there anymore, this guy that I was dating. I had time. I was able to go to the Finger Lakes with my parents. Then this guy who was running a mission group who was involved in my mother's church called me, and he was like, "How are you?" I was like, "Well, not great." And he said, "I would love for you to come and do mission work with us for a year. What you do is you spend 9 months getting closer to God and travel the world while engaging in mission work. Do you think you can make it? We leave in 10 days." So I'm in a sling and I have a, fractured hip. And I said, okay, you know, okay. So I said to God, I want all these things. And a week later, then I get in the car accident. And then just within days, this guy calls me and says, "Will you come travel the world with us, drawing closer to God?" From that same accident, I ended up getting a settlement and I got enough money that I was able to relax for a little bit. Not a lot of money, but enough that I was able to relax for a little bit. So I spent a year in the mission group. It was Christian based, and I found so much support and love there and had my first time away from alcohol. I wasn't sober. When we would go to the laundromat, I would get change at the bar and take a couple shots, but I had I would be able to have 2 weeks or a month or something like that. And then when I went to Thailand and I did mission work in Thailand for 4 months, I stayed there. I didn't drink the whole time. When I came back, I thought that I had a spiritual awakening, which I had. It was true. I had really started to develop my relationship with my higher power. The development of my relationship with my higher power has been an equal dismantling of the learned, like these learned things that I didn't quite identify with, while my felt experience raises, right? So it's been this tipping of the scales of dismantling the stuff that I didn't quite identify with, or and raising experience. And so I had a real raise in experience of connection and love and true connection, and spiritual experience and forgiveness and grace. I learned what my higher power was not, and I started to really connect with what my higher power was. So I come back home, and I think that, well, you've had a spiritual awakening. Now you can drink like a normal person, because really what it was is this God-sized hole that, you've probably all heard of the God-sized hole, and that's what I was trying to fill, right? And it turned out that in addition to this true spiritual malady is a physiological component, that when I start drinking, it ignites a phenomenon of craving that I cannot control. This is the phenomenon of craving that I really came into this world with. I'm very familiar with this phenomenon of craving. I felt it from birth. So when I start drinking, this phenomenon of craving kicks off and I cannot stop. I remember I would sit outside the bars and I would pray before I went in. Please, this time, Sometimes it worked out. Often it did not. I remember coming home, having 2 margaritas one time, running home and jumping into my bed and covering my head with the covers. Like literally, I had to hide myself to keep myself from drinking more. So this went on for a year of me trying to control my drinking. It wasn't the toxicity and the drama and the, sheer mayhem of what it was before. Wasn't driving around in taxis doing drugs with, randos, but I was, I did certainly end up doing drugs again. And so confused. God, I was so confused. I was like, I am a Christian missionary. It's like, are you though? Um, so so this went on for a year. The last time I drank was Easter 2006. And I thought, okay, I'm home, I am safe, I can drink, and it's fine. And I did not turn out that way. This night, my father told me that maybe I had had enough to drink, and my cousin was there, and she was going to go out to Greenport. She was a local town with a lot of bars, and she wanted me to go with her. I ran upstairs to get my coat. My father told her to leave, that I shouldn't go anywhere. And I came downstairs and my heart sunk as I saw her car pull away. And I realized that it was over for that night. And I lost it. And I screamed and I kicked and I screamed and I punched my father. And I said, why do you hate me so much? And he pulled me into his arms and he said, you have no idea how much I love you. And something shifted in that moment. So I went upstairs and I got through the night. And the next day, I had another prayer. This is again when I really spoke to God for the first time, a second time now. And I said, I seen, it was this, when we talk about step one, for me, it's a real spiritual awakening, this moment of sanity where grace comes in. And I suddenly understood with every cell in my body. I wish, Tommy and I speak about this, about creating the conditions for grace. Because people ask how I got sober, and for me it was this real profound experience of really just coming to this point where it all came together. And I prayed and I said, I seem to be obsessed with alcohol and I can't stop. It affects me differently than other people. I never want to drink again, and if you help me get sober, I will forever be in your debt. That day, the next day, right? So that's Monday. I was too sick. My liver was throbbing. I could feel my liver throbbing. I'm 23 years old now. I feel my liver throbbing in my body. And so that day I was too sick. Tuesday, I went to my first AA meeting. In the same room where I was sitting on the carpet samples that they had to take away from me because I was too, just not able to control myself, really truly lacking self-control from toddler. So I went to this meeting. The story of recovery is so beautiful. I was so embraced. What's also true is I attended my first yoga class on that same day, Tuesday nights in the basement of the Mattatuck Library with Rosemary Martellata. And she would put us in poses and she would say, take me, teach me, show me the way. She would put us in warrior one. She'd take me, teach me, show me the way. She was so beautiful. And we laid down in Savasana and she said, be the change you want to see in others. And I could feel the tears just streaming down the sides of my face as I laid on that yoga mat. And I went to my first meeting. I am grateful to say I have not had to have a drink since that day. That was April 17th, 2006. So I've celebrated 15 years sober. I've spent most of my sobriety in AA. I still spend a lot of my sobriety in AA. What's come up for me in this recovery journey is a equally powerful codependency issue that I say that if codependency could kill, I was on my way to that as well. When I met Tommy and started to learn about Recovery 2.0 and the teachings there, listening to Nikki Myers share and Rolf Gates. I would go to these yoga meditation and recovery retreats at Kripalu. I may have met a few of you there. I've been there for years and years, or maybe, I think 6 or 7 years in a row. They didn't do it these past 2, but did it virtually this year. But I would go there and I would learn about boundaries, and I would learn about empowerment and the need for yoga practice and continuing to have a spiritual practice that I engage in daily. Again, the remedy and the necessity, like this remedy for this spiritual malady that I have always had, is coming into the present moment again. And so the 12 steps help me come into the present moment, right? They help me really break down what is happening. They help me take my mind out of the past and take my mind out of the future, cleaning up a lot of wreckage, restitution, things like that, and continuing to enrich my spiritual journey. Yoga does that for me as well, right? So it's continued to be necessary to come back to the present moment, to come back to the breath, to come back to connecting with others, being present, service. All of these things really help me find freedom, which is always what I wanted. Always wanted freedom. I always wanted a remedy to this kind of spiritual malady or mental deficiency, like whatever it was, I don't know, mental deficiency, that's not appropriate, but I see it now, the recovery path, the destiny path toward recovery, this beautiful, gifted life of recovery I am so blessed to have as my destiny, and the promise in recovery, one of the many promises is that no matter how far down the scale we have gone, we'll see how our experience can benefit others. And I am grateful for everything. When I speak about it, when I speak about being 22 years old and that toxicity and that violence and desperation, it creates a little bit of a shortness of breath. I still see a lot of gratitude for it though. And I'm grateful to say that because of this work, because of this path of recovery, it doesn't actively create a charge for me anymore. So I've done these 12 steps several times. I continue to go to AA meetings. I go to Recovery 2.0 meetings. I stay really close to Recovery 2.0. I stay as close as I can because the teachings of yoga and of all the teachers in Recovery 2.0, Tommy, that helps me be most useful in this life. It helps me connect with freedom. It helps me connect with my higher power, which has morphed into 1,000 beautiful different things than what it originally started as. It's uniquely mine, and I'm so grateful for it. Because of this step work, because of this recovery process, I'll tell you maybe just one more story. Don't hold me to it, but here's one more story. I'm at the yoga meditation and recovery retreat, maybe 5 years ago, and I'm waking up to go to one of the things, and I get a text message, and it says, "Hey," whatever. I said, "Who's this?" And they said, "George." It's George, right? So this is the very toxic person that I was with 20 years ago now. And I said, "I'm at the ashram, I can't talk." And I just walked away. And we went to a yoga class, and we went to lecture, and then we went to breakfast or whatever, and lunch, and it kept on going. And then we get later in the day, and I was like, "Oh, this happened. That person reached out to me." And I instantaneously forgot about it. I didn't dwell on it. It didn't scare me. I had been about to embark on another 4th step, and I was like, I have to go through all this garbage again. I don't want to go through all this garbage again. I don't want to have to write it all down again. And it was a very clear message to me that you don't have to write that down again. You don't have to process that anymore. You've processed it. It's done. You can move on. You can move on to, the more subtle behaviors is what I find now I need to process. These more subtle behaviors, it doesn't turned out not to be the real big thing that I thought it was. So I continue to refine. So grateful for this path. It's never shut me out. It's accepted me in the most elementary stages of simply don't drink for don't have one drink for one day. They said go to 90 meetings in 90 days, and that's all you have to worry about. You don't drink and you go to a meeting. That's all you worry about. That's all you do. When I was blessed to go to India with Recovery 2.0 in 2020. He posted about it, I think, this morning on Instagram. And yeah, hopefully we do get to go back again this year. So we were sitting at the feet of these really amazing teachers in India who have been in meditation for decades and decades. The deepest spiritual work really here, And I sit down just waiting to hear what profound things that they are going to say. And what they said was, looking for your part in disagreement, sitting and learning not to scratch the itch, engaging in prayer and meditation. And I'm hearing what they're saying. And I was like, not disappointed at all, just profoundly grateful that I have been in the deepest spiritual work that there is to be found the whole time. These meetings, Recovery 2.0 meetings, 12-step based meetings, church basements, all of it is the deepest spiritual work that I have come across. It's all there. And it's as simple as staying away from one drink for one day, right? If whatever it is, you translate, drink to whatever your drink is. I've always found a place there. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. It's perfectly imperfect. Has been my experience. So, just so grateful to have been on this destiny path of both addiction and recovery. I have no idea what the rest of it brings, what the rest of my life brings. I do hope that it is a long, slow recovery, like they wished me in the beginning, a long, slow recovery. So I do wish that I continue to be on this path of recovery, this path of discovery with all of you, as we certainly do not do it alone. So I think with that, I will thank you for letting me share my story with you today. I hope that it has been helpful. I hope that it has been inspiring. At the very least, I hope to inspire you to explore and stay with it, stay in it. And then I would love to hear from you as well. So I think what Stacy was saying is that we can do a little bit of Q&A as well, or feedback, or sharing a little bit of your experience. Thank you so much, everyone. But how do you share R2O with traditional recovery modalities? I did not stop going to AA, though in the past 3 months, my life has gotten very, 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 very busy. In fact, I in the pandemic was more useful in AA than I think I've ever been in working with Zoom and keeping meetings going online, things like that. So I did continue to do that. I speak in a general way. When I go to AA, I speak in a general way. I speak about my higher power in a general way. I speak about my practice in a general way. Sometimes I'll say, if you want to know exactly what that means, because I'm also somebody that needs to know, I'm like, people share in a general way. And I'm like, okay, but tell me exactly what to do. So I will share about my yoga practice, or I'll share about my meditation practice, and I will say, you know, I'll speak in a general way, and then I'll say, and if you're curious of what exactly that means to me, that's what this is. And if anyone wants to know more about that, we can chat about it afterward, and push it on anybody. So I see how they really blend into one another. They really come together. I know that people, when they come into Recovery 2.0, they are so grateful that these lives that they had of yoga and recovery and, spirituality and sobriety and, all these things were like in these different compartments. And in Recovery 2.0 can really bring them all together. Tommy's language, I take my teachers and I mimic them. It used to make me feel, oh, you remember this word from the night, poser? Remember that word from the 90s, poser? It made me feel like I was just playing a part. But I'm learning is what I'm doing. I'm always learning. I'm either learning negative behavior, I'm learning positive behavior, and I'm practicing negative behavior, I'm practicing positive behavior. So I listen to the way that Tommy speaks. He learned from somebody else about the, speaking with the open nature and the accepting nature and the loving nature. And so when I speak about my recovery path now, it's in at least I hope that this is true. This is the goal, if it's not that way, it's like, you all have spiritual consent to call it out. But I try and, embrace them all with love and respect. So that's how I bring them all together. And I see the similarity. Tommy also talks about when you see truth, it's really just the undercurrent of all that is. And it doesn't, when you touch on, not that I've, feel like I've graduated to anything, but I just see how it's all the same. I see now how it's all the same. So it doesn't separate to me anymore. It doesn't even really take a lot of work, because I see how it's all the same. Okay. So somebody is writing in the Q&A. How about your family? Have they been successful in recovery? Oh, such a great question. Thank you. My mother is 11 years sober now. Yeah. So when I was 3 years sober, she came to me, and she had a spiritual experience about it, and she hasn't had a drink since. Yeah. So she has found recovery. It's been her own path. My grandfather, when I was a child, he was, we always heard, Grampy can't drink because he's an alcoholic. So I remember hearing that. 2 of my cousins are supposedly sober now. Yeah. One of them calls me her sponsor, even though I tell her I'm not. And the other one won't talk to me about it, which is, whatever. This, we're all dealing with our boundary things. Thank you for that question. Yeah, they're doing really well. You experience cravings for sugar? If so, is there a specific practice you perform? I've learned that, to really try and figure out where it's coming from. Yeah, sometimes I crave sugar. Sometimes I crave sweet. It usually happens when I'm eating a lot of sugar. So sometimes I have to fast. I really enjoy fasting, not, totally, but like I engage in Lent every year. Wasn't a practice that I was raised in, but I engage in Lent every year. And so during that 40-year period of time, it's somewhat like a sadhana, like a 40-day sadhana, right? And so usually I'm engaging in a practice, I'm recommitting to my yoga practice during that period of time, and also eliminating something. So I'll find that if I've been, like your body craves what it's been given. And so if I am craving sugar a lot and eating a lot of sugar, then I'll give up sugar for those 40 days. And I find that naturally the craving just starts to dissipate. Another thing that I've learned is that a sugar craving is a craving for protein. And so sometimes if there's I will have more protein. I'll have more protein. It doesn't mean to be animal protein, but I do, I don't have any restrictions in that way. I just try and make sure that I'm sourcing well. So, yeah, so if I'm craving sugar, I try and look at it like that. And yes, a fast for me is very helpful for a period of time. How did you come to Recovery 2.0? Through the yoga meditation and recovery retreat in Kripalu via Nikki Myers. I was following her and saw that she was at Kripalu. That's an ashram in Massachusetts. You all will hear Nikki in 2 days. Don't miss that one. On Sunday, she's going to share her story. Amazing. So via Nikki, I came to the yoga meditation and recovery retreat, and that's where I met Tommy and came across his book for the first time. I didn't dive right in then. That was maybe 8 years ago. But I couldn't wait to get back next year and engage again. And so I would go back to that retreat every year, and then I would do the coaching programs. So it really helped round out my recovery during that time. All right. Well, love to you all.